if no questions coming in, I'll ask a question of the group. We all, I guess, come from different organisations that may focus more on risk management or decision analysis, or both. But I would be interested to hear the different perspectives. Is one organisation more, the basis is more risk management, whereas are others decision analysis? Or are there organisations out there that are collaborating well and managing to pull the two disciplines together? And thanks, Karen. I see your questions came in there. So we'll come to that. Yeah, I'll answer that. Any just feedback on that question around organisations and you know, from your perspective?
On our side, we're financial institutions, we're mostly risk management. The decision, I would say the big process or framework of decision will be in the strategic planning, not on a daily basis.
Yeah, no, that's helpful. Thank you. And how do you find the integration between those two disciplines, or areas within the organization?
We're still in the process of integrating both. We're, I would say, relatively new in the ERM process. So we started with the last strat plan, and we're in the midst of doing a new one, and the risk management is involved in that. So we're not totally integrated for the moment.
Yeah. And maybe a good opportunity as well, if you are on that journey, you can maybe start thinking about integration as part of that journey. I'll go to Karen's question. So I'm curious about what a decision analyst is. Could you define this a bit further, please? So a decision analyst, it would be someone who would facilitate the decision making. So would help the team, for example, facilitate a framing session at the start of the project, and also provides, there's lots of tools within the decision analysis toolbox. So there's lots of tools and processes that can help a team with decision making. So the analysts would really be bringing that toolbox and helping the team along all the steps of the decision process, from framing right to when they come to a recommendation to the decision maker.
Anyone else with other questions?
Actually, do you mind if I push that just a little bit further? This is Karen speaking.
Yeah, thanks, Karen. Yeah.
Yeah, that's really an interesting thing. So I am in a federal government department in the Canadian government. And when we talk about making decisions, they're fairly, I wouldn't say regimented, but we do have a system of accountability. And so the people who are charged with making decisions would be, I'm wondering if they would be more or less open to someone else coming in and helping them to make those decisions. So what I'm thinking is it's almost being able to hold a mirror up to those folks who are accountable and say, let me help you. So then you're getting into the psychology of that person. Would they be allowing somebody in to help them? What you're saying here are these fantastic tools to bring clarity to their decision making. So I'm looking at what would the system look like whereby decision analyst, would be able to come and give advice to this particular individual or a committee of individuals who would need to make decisions. on public spending. So it's one of those where I'm trying to get my head around this in a public context as opposed to a private sector context. So I was wondering if you've ever navigated in a government setting, in a public sector setting, where the idea of accountability is so heavy, and making sure that when you are making decisions on spending public money, that you've got that openness to doing the exercise of seeking the clarity prior to making decision. I'll send it over to you with, that's a lot all at once.
Yeah, no, thank you. And excellent questions. And then thanks for going further on it. I would say that, you know, the main thing is the analyst is not making the decision. So the decision maker, you know, I suppose you can give them comfort there. They are still the decision maker, and accountability still rests with them. All the analyst is doing is helping the team that are coming to that decision maker with a recommendation to be a bit more structured around their decision-making process, so that, for example, the decision maker may have more options with which to weigh up, rather than, you know, there's two options that come forward, which can be typical a lot of the time if we get into that biased mode of thinking, as I talked about. But also there's then good analysis put forward as well, that in the evaluation stage, that the decision maker can then understand and look at the trade-offs between the different options. So if anything, it gives that decision maker more clarity, but there will still be difficult decisions to make, but it can give them more clarity and hopefully potentially more value. From my experience in government, public sector, I understand where you're coming from that. But Diana, I was going to hand over to you. Have you any experience in the public sector with decision makers? And the reason I'm asking, I'm more coming from the private sector background, but do you want to add anything on that from maybe
So Craig is being a little bit modest. He also has experience with a government regulator as well. So, you know, working within a government context. So I would say, to the advantage, if you work in government, there is usually pretty strong decision process, right? Because things need to be transparent. So, you know, there's actually quite a bit of decision process put in place. The challenge, and this is a challenge both for the public sector and the private sector, is that so the idea here isn't to take away the accountability or authority of the decision maker, but it's basically to supplement, complement, support them, right? So, but that also means that decision maker needs to accept some help, right? So, you know, the one challenge often when you're trying to introduce these kinds of methods is people will say, but I'm a good decision maker. That's why I'm in this position. And that's, you know, like, are you telling me I don't know how to make decisions? And so that's definitely not what it's about. It's more about giving them more clarity and making it, you know, with that clarity, they can be more confident in the decisions that they're making. So I think you come up against that issue of, you know, how do you diplomatically say you want to support a decision maker who, you know, has been making decisions all their career, and the reason they're in the position they are in is because, you know, they have, you know, they got some skill in decision making. So this is really about, so part of it is process and tools, right, that a decision analyst brings to the table. And part of it is the interplay between the decision analyst and the decision maker. That's what is called decision dialogue. And so, you know, it may be that even though you have lots of process around decisions in the federal government, it may be that the dialogue between the decision analysts, the people who are gathering that information for decision makers, and then the people or committees that have to make a decision, that interplay, that dialogue back and forth is not optimal. So it can be, part of what a decision analyst may bring to the table is helping to tighten up that dialogue. So that's what I would say. Is that helpful, Karen?
Oh my goodness, yes, thank you. Actually, this is a really interesting discussion. You can imagine I am actually in the Treasury Board Secretariat, and so we are running the process of the process.
Right.
Decision making. So it's very familiar to me what you're saying. I'm trying to make it as generic as possible for the discussion. So this is really, really helpful. So my role is, just because of the question that Craig had prior to my intervention, is I'm currently in internal audit, and my specialty is risk management. And so where do the two meet together? And then for sure, it is, what are the decisions and what are the things we need to consider? And for sure, we need to always have, what are the risks and opportunities? So the upside and downside of risks. When we bring the options to the decision makers, always we have to have options, and each one with their risks. So it's quite disciplined in some ways, but not everybody's familiar with it, because, as you've said beautifully, I love this presentation, by the way, with the biases of wanting to go to that instinctual problem solving piece first without taking the time to think things through. So my job is to help people think things through. So this is really terrific. So thank you very much. And I'll stop and give the floor to somebody else. Thank you.
All right. Good morning, everyone.
Morning.
This is Karen Jarrett. Diana, Craig, if you would allow me to just say thank you to Karen for that question. And the explanation from you is that I learned a lot. And I would like to talk to Karen after the session. If she could give me her email address. Diana, as you said, I should sought assistance from other firms.
Yeah.
And she said that she's internal auditor and she specializes in risk management. That is the same for me. I was pulled from the internal audit department to develop the risk management framework for my organization. So maybe she could help me. I don't know. You could, Karen?
Sure, Karen, if you're willing, I can, the two Karens, I can connect you. You
Yes.
both work in
Government?
national government level organizations. So you may be able to, maybe a good connection for both of you.
Easiest way to get me is through LinkedIn. If you can see my name written out, you can search me on LinkedIn and find me there.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Okay, anyone else?
Thanks.
Did you have a question, Karen Jarrett?
No, I just in the learning mood at this time.
Okay. Anyone else on the call who has been maybe in both private, government sector and corporate sector that might have a comment on the nuances, the differences between how decision analysis or risk management works and the potential for integration?
Hi, it's Deb Krismanich. I can just share that, and I think that integration also happens, and I think this is back to Craig's point about where in the organization and what types of organization, but also at the PMO level. So that framing, the ability to do framing not only from a scope perspective, but also on major problems, and the tie between risk and decision analysis is just another area where it exists.
Great, thanks. So questions or any discussion topic, we're open. We've got some more time, a few more minutes anyway.
This is Johannes. I'm just going to add a few things in there.
Sure.
I work mainly on projects, and people don't call it decision making, but they in early stages of the project where we have to do various alternative for executing the projects or decision making around the design of the project. So there is what we call a select phase where various decisions are making about the approach for starting to execute the project. And so people call it as a risk assessment, but really a lot of it is decision making. And I think it's more, companies need to be, not all of them, but some of them need to be introduced about the idea of quality decision making and how that is specifically different from risk assessments, because sometimes we make the wrong alternatives without understanding really what is the purpose of the business objective into doing this project. So I think trying to maybe introduce those specific aspects of the project that are really more decision making supported by risk assessment may help, but that's the area where I see the integration will work.
Thank you. Craig, any thoughts on that?
Yeah, I did have things coming to mind there. Yeah, I think, I mean, I have heard different organizations can use different terminology for the initial phases, opportunity framing, or I think you're right. I think the key step is, in a way, it doesn't matter what the organization calls it. It's more important that they are actually taking some time out to do it. And one of the main pushbacks is around timing. And we can't give a day to actually look at this and take the time out to really frame it properly. When you actually stand back, that it just doesn't make sense, because you end up using a lot more days later on because you haven't aligned all your key stakeholders. And Chad, I see you're on the call there. And another way, for organizations that are looking to move more into decision quality, decision analysis, framing is one of the key ways to start that journey, rather than try and bring in all the steps and all the tools and all the processes. It may just be an area where you can start to bring in, without overwhelming people with terminology and jargon. You can maybe start on the journey just at the framing step.
Yeah, and I would just echo what Johannes said as well, is that if you don't do the framing, or you try to do it too quickly, you end up solving the wrong problem, right? Or coming up with the wrong solutions, or as Craig said in his talk, you miss out on certain alternative solutions, right? You don't even spend the time, because what we typically do in most organizations is we have the status quo, we have the solution we want, and we have one other we throw in there for comparison that is usually the Cadillac that nobody can afford anyway, right? So it's very much just either or thinking, whereas the important part of the framing is you really take the time to get into the context, and that enables you to be very creative about all kinds of other ways to solve the problem. And as Craig said, that if you just start with framing, you don't need to do all kinds of quantitative, evaluations and tools. It's mostly qualitative, but it's critical thinking work that saves you so much time and gives you so much more value over the course of the whole decision. So, anyone else with a question? Maybe just one more before we close off today. A question or comment, observation? If you'd like to pick Craig's brain.
So this master classes you've been suggesting, are there 3 different master classes for the 3 sessions that we have? Or sorry, I didn't get my heads around that. Or is it just a one master class to the overall ERM integration with decision?
Do you want to go down, or?
Yeah, go ahead.
So no, it's not directly related to these three web shares, although some of the topics will obviously come up. It's more related to decision quality and introducing you to the 6 elements of decision quality. So taking that journey to what makes a good quality decision, framing is in there, and all the other elements we bring into that masterclass. So it's 5 group sessions, but there's also self-study as well as coaching at the end of it. So rather than the typical training where we consume a lot, we then go back to the day-to-day work that you're doing within your organization, and then we start to lose what we've learned. There's an opportunity at the end with coaching to then help you start to have the confidence to try some of these tools. For example, it could be framing or I mentioned the decision quality assessment. So that's a very useful tool to actually assess your decision making and decisions within the organization.
And I guess the other.
And then when you go, Danny, I'll let you. Yeah.
I was going to say, and the 5th out of the 5 sessions is really about exploring how do you bring these kinds of approaches into an organization. So it's not just about what are the approaches, but really understanding that for it to work, it's got to become embedded in the way you do your business. And so some the last session is really exploring, well, how would you start to do that? Where are the places where you can begin to plug these ideas and approaches in?
Thank you.
So with that, anything else? Still a couple minutes left, and then we'd like to.
Actually, Diana, I did not receive the PowerPoint for the last the September 30.
Okay, well,
training.
let me, I'll follow up on that. Thanks, Karen.
Okay.
Could I ask one last question? Got time? What other areas, looking at risk management, decision analysis, what other areas would you, in future web shares, would you like us to discuss or present topics around? And one thing, Karen, from your question, I'm thinking, maybe there's something around decision dialogue, around the decision makers as well. How do you tactics for moving them and making them more open to this approach? But are there any others, Karen? See, you've got your hand up.
Thank you. Yes, I would agree with that. And along with that, there's something that I've been exploring over some time, is that how do we reduce the fear? And what I mean by that is when we go to our decision makers and say, you realize that you need to understand your risks before you make a decision. Sometimes they clam up, or sometimes they become maybe a little forceful. To the extreme, they would become aggressive. But I find that it's very much the human being in behind that decision maker that's coming out. And how do we meet that person where they're at with their fear, so that they can then, we can, as facilitators who are looking at the decision analysis or the risk management, or both together, to help them work through the fear or put the fear aside, so they can get clarity on the risks and then the decisions they need to make as a result. So it's looking at that very human factor of facing fear when we're doing this. So you put it very gently, which is, how do we diplomatically ask them to receive some advice that we think they might need, or at least make it a safe space so that they can ask for help. So this is the kind of thing that interests me, because then if you can get that atmosphere where people are relaxed and able to then speak the truth, about their risks, the fears they have, the issues that they see, the challenges they're facing, then it's easier to get that clarity and use these wonderful tools that you have. So that is what's interesting to me.
Thank you.
Okay, that's a great suggestion. All right, so with that, we'll wrap up this web share and stay tuned. We'll be doing more things in the new year. So we'll keep everyone posted about the topics for the next series.
Thanks, everyone. Good discussion. Thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah,
So,
thanks. Bye-bye all.
bye.
Bye.
Thank you.
Thank you.